Hello again, I'm Hannah.
And I'm Fran. In this Freshwater Habitats Trust video, we are going to take you through the second phase of filling in the pond habitat survey.
First, we'll check that we correctly identified the winter waterline from the online maps. This is best done by choosing a spot where you can see the entire pond margin, or by walking around the pond perimeter.
Remember that most pond habitat variables are based on the whole pond, not just where the water is on the day that we visit. We can also use this walk around to look for any inflow or outflows. There are none on this pond.
If the pond edge is not obvious, change in vegetation is usually the most reliable way to determine the winter waterline, marked by a distinct change from wetland plants to dry ground species.
Often the line itself is marked by a fringe of soft or hard rush or wetland flowers like lesser spearwort. The change is sometimes also accompanied by a break in slope caused by winter wave wash.
In shaded ponds with few plants, the upper water level can often be judged from discoloration marks on rocks or trees, particularly willows or alder that grow in the pond itself, or the extent of rotting leaf litter.
The first variable we can judge in the field is the age of the pond. New ponds are less than 10 years of age, and you should still be able to see some evidence of spoil or groundworks adjacent to where it has been created. In this case, the pond has clearly been here for many years. If we wanted to know exactly when it was created, we could ask the landowner, but that information is not essential.
Next, we need to decide how often the pond dries out. The advantage of surveying a pond during the summer is that you will often be seeing ponds at their lowest water level. Ponds like this are unlikely to ever dry out. Some ponds hold water in most years, but in drought years they may dry out completely. They often have a thick layer of sediment on the pond base.
Ponds that have dried out significantly by the middle of summer in an average year are likely to dry out completely in some years. Ponds that are always dry by midsummer are temporary ponds. If you can't tell on your visit, ask the landowner. Next, we'll decide how much shade covers the pond. We record pond shade in two different ways. The first is to measure the percentage of the whole pond covered by shade, imagining the sun is directly overhead.
We recommend that you use a map and mark on the amount of pond overhung by trees and shrubs. Then use the diagram on the recording form to calculate the percentage of the pond which is shaded. It can help to imagine that you've grouped all the shapes into one corner of the pond. In this case, it's about 15%.
The next measure of shade is to describe how much of the pond margin has cover which extends out across the pond for at least 1 metre. In this case, it's about 50%. We also use percentage cover to measure the abundance of aquatic vegetation. Looking at the pond, we need to judge how much of the whole pond, wet and dry, is covered by emergent vegetation.
For this measure, we don't include any of the floating leaf species or any submerged species. It can help to mark all the patches of emergent vegetation on your map, and then use the diagram to calculate the area.
In this case, 10%.
The second measure is the amount of vegetation in the water. This is one of the only times we look at the area of water rather than the area of the whole pond. This assessment is to judge the suitability of the pond for breeding amphibians, and the amount of vegetation in the water is a good indicator.
We include all the plants in this measure, submerged, emergent and floating, except for duckweeds. We'll add the areas of vegetation to the map and then calculate the total. In this case, it's about 40%. We'll also use the map to calculate the amount of water left in the pond as a percentage of the whole pond. Using the percentage cover diagram, this is about 60%.
Next, we'll assess the drawdown zone. This is the vertical distance between the current water level and the maximum winter water line. In this pond, the drawdown zone is about 40 centimetres, but in some ponds it can be more than 1 metre. We'll finish this session by filling in the details about fish and waterfowl impacts on the pond.
Fish presence is determined by local observation. If the pond is heavily fished, the impact will be major and the pond will often have little vegetation, with coffee-coloured water. If there is no formal fishing, but you can see that small fish, like stickleback, are present, the impact is likely to be minor.
This pond is near to a formal fishing pond and a car park, so it's possible that fish are present. We'll mark this option on the form. We judge waterfowl impact in the same way. Major waterfowl impact is often seen in ponds where duck feeding takes place.
Minor impact occurs when there are waterfowl present, but they appear to be doing little damage. On this pond, we've seen a few moorhen, but no other evidence of waterfowl, so we'll note down that there is no evidence of waterfowl impact on this pond.
Tune in to part 3 for the final instalment.